and you won't believe the exact shade of marble in my foyer.
The heiress across the table was still talking, but Cha Hyung-woo wasn't listening. Somewhere around the 12th minute of her explaining the architectural nuances of her family's summer estate in Milan, his patience had quietly evaporated. This was the third setup this week. 3. In the span of a single month, his grandmother Soo-hee had apparently decided his life was a PR disaster waiting to happen. That was the only explanation Hyun-woo had. Because who blackmails their own grandson into a forced marriage to appease a conservative board of directors? The kind of matriarch who held the controlling shares of his empire and had decided his rebellious streak was now a corporate liability. Settle down and show them stability, the old woman had said, her voice sharp as glass over the phone. Bring a fiancé to the gala or the CEO title goes to Min Jae. Hyun-woo had gripped his phone, the skin around his neck tattoo prickling with irritation. His cousin Min Jae, who had once lost $3 million investing in a virtual yacht. So here he was, wearing a fitted black suit jacket over an open-collared shirt, sitting in a Michelin-starred restaurant while a woman across from him described the exact shade of imported marble in her foyer. His phone vibrated against his ribs. He pulled it from his jacket pocket under the table. It was his chief operating officer, Tae. "Excuse me," Hyun-woo said, standing up and offering the heiress a tight, utterly empty smile. "I need to take this." He stepped out onto the restaurant's private terrace, the cool night air doing nothing to calm his nerves. He pressed the phone to his ear. "What?" "A joy to hear your voice, as always," Tae said, sounding infuriatingly entertained. "How is candidate number 3? Tae." Hyun-woo ran a hand through his layered blonde hair, tugging slightly at the roots. "I have been gritting my teeth so hard my jaw is clicking. I know her preferred brand of polo mallet. I know her poodle has a designated private chef. If I stay in there one more minute, I'm going to set something on fire." Tae chuckled, a sound that grated on Hyun-woo's last nerve. Then, the line went quiet for a beat. "You know, what if you just bypass the matchmaking?" "Bypass it how?" "Throw Min Jae off a bridge." "No. Just give the board what they want. The illusion of stability. Find a woman, pay her, and have her wear a ring for a few months until your shares vest and Soo-hee backs off. Fake the engagement. Then you break it off later due to irreconcilable differences." Hyun-woo went completely still, the city lights reflecting in his dark eyes. An image suddenly anchored his chaotic thoughts, composed, brilliant, unflappable. Someone the board couldn't dismiss. Someone he trusted implicitly with his life. "I have to go," he said. He hung up, turned on his heel, and walked back to the table. He looked down at the heiress, who paused mid-sentence, looking up at him expectantly. "I apologize," Hyun-woo said, his voice dropping into its usual, uncompromising cadence. "A corporate emergency requires my immediate attention. Have a good evening." He didn't wait for her reply. He was already heading for the door, walking out into the night and heading straight for the one person whose quiet, perfectly organized sanctuary he was about to completely upend, Fina. If you're new here, welcome to Afro-Korean Cartel Stories. Subscribe and hit that notification button is free. Before you keep watching, you're going love and want to follow this one all the way through. Hyun-woo pushed open the heavy glass door to Fina's office without knocking. The loud city noise outside vanished, replaced by the quiet, peaceful hum of her neat, beige and white workspace. Fina sat behind her desk in a black office chair. She wore a light taupe blazer and thin, dark glasses. Her long, straight black hair fell smoothly over her shoulders. She was reading something on her computer, her face soft but very serious. She looked completely elegant and perfectly in control. Before Hyun-woo could even say a word, his phone rang again. It was a sharp, angry sound. He pulled it out and looked at the screen. "Grandmother Soo-hee." He stopped right in the middle of the room and answered. "Grandmother." Hyun-woo, her cold voice came through the speaker. Fina looked up, her dark eyes watching him closely. "I am done playing games. The board meets the morning after the gala this weekend. If you do not walk into that ballroom with a respectable fiancé, you are out. I will give the CEO title to Min Jae." Hyun-woo's jaw tightened. "Min Jae is a fool who loses money for fun." "Min Jae is safe," Soo-hee snapped back. "You look like a rebel. The board wants a family man they can trust, not a wild boy with a neck tattoo. Bring a bride or pack your desk." The line went dead. Hyunwoo slowly pulled the phone away from his ear. He tossed it onto the soft leather couch. The room was totally silent. He stood there for a moment, breathing hard. Wearing his fitted black suit jacket with the top buttons of his white shirt left open, he looked dangerous, cornered, and desperate. Fina just watched him. She did not panic. She sat perfectly still, looking like a calm, smart professional. "Trouble?" she asked in her smooth, quiet voice. He walked over to her desk. He did not sit in the guest chair. Instead, he leaned forward and planted both of his hands flat on the polished wood. He leaned in very close. His sharp face was intense. His ash-blonde hair fell slightly into his eyes. He stared right into her calm eyes. He needed someone brilliant. He needed someone the strict board could never reject. He needed her. Fina blinked once behind her glasses. She already knew exactly what he was going to ask. "Pretend we're engaged," he whispered. Fina did not blink. She just sat back in her black chair and folded her hands on her lap. "No. Fina, please." Hyunwoo did not move back. He stayed leaning over her desk, his hands pressed flat against the wood. His voice was rough and tired. "If I walk into that gala alone, my grandmother takes everything. She will hand the company to Min-jae. You know what he will do to this place. I am your friend, Hyunwoo. Not your fake bride," she said calmly. But inside, her heart gave a hard, painful jump. "You are asking me to lie to your family, the board, and the entire city. It is a terrible idea. It is the only idea I have." The room went totally quiet. He did not leave. He did not shout or order her around like a boss. He just stayed there, leaning over the desk, looking down at her. Fina looked at him. She really looked at him. She looked past the sharp jawline, the expensive black suit, and the tough neck tattoo. She saw the boy she had known for 7 years. She saw the friend who always protected her, now looking completely desperate and trapped. If she said no, he would lose the empire he had worked his whole life to build. She let out a slow, quiet breath. "Fine," she said softly. "I will do it." Hyunwoo closed his eyes for a second. The tension left his shoulders, and he looked incredibly relieved. "Thank you," he breathed out. Hours later, Fina was alone in her quiet apartment. The city lights glowed through her window. She sat on the edge of her bed, still wearing her beige blazer, and looked at the clock on her nightstand. She gave herself exactly 10 minutes. For 10 minutes, she let herself feel it. She let herself feel the secret love she had hidden for him for years. She thought about how much it would hurt to hold his hand, to wear his ring, and to know none of it was real. Her chest ached with a heavy, deep sadness. When the clock changed, the 10 minutes were up. Fina stood up, took off her glasses, and wiped her eyes. She pushed the feelings deep down and locked them away. She walked over to her laptop, opened a blank document, and started making a plan. There was work to do. The ballroom of the Grand Hotel was filled with bright lights and rich, judging eyes. It was their first public test. Fina walked beside Hyunwoo, her arm slipped easily through his. She wore a deep emerald gown that looked beautiful against her medium brown skin. The heavy diamond ring on her finger felt cold, but her smile was perfectly warm. When they faced the cameras, Fina did not freeze. She leaned into his side, laughing softly at something he hadn't even said. She was flawless. She greeted older board members with total respect and easily charmed the younger, jealous guests. Every move she made was calculated and smooth. Hyunwoo, however, kept forgetting his lines. He was supposed to be playing the part of a man tamed by love. Instead, he found himself just staring at her. He watched the way the chandelier light caught her long, dark hair. He watched how her calm, intelligent voice easily quieted a rude investor. When a wealthy businessman stood a little too close to her, Hyunwoo stepped in immediately. His protective instinct flared up, sharp and real, completely breaking his rehearsed act. He pulled her gently by the waist, his intense eyes daring anyone to challenge them. He was not acting. He was just watching the woman he thought he knew so well, suddenly amazed by her. Later, the ride back to her apartment was completely silent. The thick glass of the luxury car blocked out the loud city noise. Fina stared out the window, exhausted from hiding her true feelings all night. Hyunwoo sat beside her, his suit jacket unbuttoned. He turned his head to look at her quiet, serious face in the dark. "You were incredible tonight," he said. His voice was low and slightly rough. Fina kept her eyes on the passing streetlights. She did not look at him. If she looked at him, the walls she had built during her 10-minute breakdown might shatter. "That is the job, Hyunwoo," she replied evenly. "I told you I would handle it." "I didn't mean just the acting," he said softly. Fina finally turned her head. The space between them in the back seat suddenly felt dangerously small. He was looking at her like she was the only real thing in the world. Neither of them was talking about the fake engagement anymore. The Cha family estate sat behind tall, heavy iron gates. It was quiet, cold, and massive. Inside the grand main hall, grandmother Soo-hee waited. She was perfectly polite, offering them hot tea in delicate cups. But her sharp eyes watched their every move. She was studying them, looking for a single mistake or a crack in their story. Cousin Min-jae lounged on a velvet sofa across from them. He smiled widely, but the warmth did not reach his eyes. His charm was the kind that instantly warned you not to trust him. Leaning forward, he asked tricky, probing questions about their sudden romance, trying to catch them in a lie. Fina handled it flawlessly. She did not flinch. She had spent 7 years learning exactly how Hyunwoo's ruthless world worked. She answered Min-jae with a calm, steady voice, offering perfectly crafted stories. When she gently touched Hyunwoo's arm to complete the picture of a loving couple, her hand was warm and relaxed. Hyunwoo sat very close to her, his jaw tight. He watched his family carefully, completely ready to defend her the second Min-jae crossed a line. By the time evening came, the polite act had drained them both. A quiet servant led them upstairs to their shared guest suite. The heavy wooden door clicked shut behind them, leaving them completely alone. The bedroom was huge, with high ceilings, soft lighting, and a massive bed sitting right in the center. Yet, as the silence stretched out, the large space suddenly felt incredibly small. Hyunwoo immediately pulled off his black suit jacket and tossed it onto a chair. He let out a long, heavy breath and rubbed the back of his neck, right over his tattoo. The dangerous, defensive energy he had carried all day began to fade, leaving him looking tired and vulnerable. Across the room, Fina stood near the tall window. She kept her arms crossed tightly over her chest like a protective shield. They stayed on opposite sides of the room, staring at the floor, the walls, the window, anywhere but at each other. The public performance was over for the night, but the quiet, electric air between them felt heavier and more dangerous than ever. The flash of cameras followed them into the bright art gallery. It was another planned date to keep the public talking. For the first hour, they played their parts perfectly. Hyunwoo held her hand closely, and Fina smiled politely at the paintings. But by the time they left the gallery and sat down in a dark, quiet restaurant, the act began to fade. There were no reporters here. They were seated in a private corner booth. Hyunwoo leaned back in his chair, undoing the top button of his shirt. He looked relaxed, the dangerous edge finally softening. They talked about work at first, easily falling into their normal rhythm. Then, the conversation slowly shifted. "Do you ever think about the real thing?" Fina asked softly, resting her hands on the table. "After all of this is over, what kind of woman do you actually want to marry?" Hyunwoo looked thoughtfully at the candle between them. He did not even have to think about it. "Someone who does not care about the company or the money," he said, his voice deep and quiet. "Someone who can stand in the middle of my chaotic life and stay completely calm. A woman who sees right through my bad attitude and knows exactly who I am underneath." He looked up, meeting her eyes directly. "Someone brilliant. Someone who does not run away when things get hard. Honestly, Fina, I just want someone who makes me feel like I do not have to fight the whole world every single day." He smiled a small, honest smile. He had just described Fina perfectly. Every single word was exactly who she was. But as he took a sip of his drink, Fina saw the awful truth in his relaxed face. He had no idea he was talking about her. To him, this dream woman was still a stranger he hoped to meet one day in the future. He still only saw her as his best friend. The pain hit Fina's chest so hard she could barely breathe. The heavy fake diamond on her finger felt like a cruel joke. She stood up carefully, forcing her face into a perfect, polite mask. "Excuse me," she said, her voice completely steady. "I need to use the restroom." Hyunwoo nodded, totally unaware of the damage he had just done. Fina walked into the bright, empty restroom and locked the door. She gripped the edge of the cold sink, bowed her head, and closed her eyes. She stayed exactly like that for 4 minutes, forcing her breaking heart back into its cage. The private meeting happened the next morning. Grandmother Suhi did not ask for Hyunwoo, she only wanted to see Fina. When Fina arrived back at the Grand Cha estate, a servant led her into a bright, quiet sunroom. Suhi sat by a large window, pouring hot tea. She did not look strict or angry today. Instead, she looked very peaceful. "Sit down, Fina," Suhi said softly. Fina sat on the edge of a velvet chair, keeping her back straight. She wore her professional beige blazer, using it like armor. "I have watched my grandson for his whole life," Suhi began. She pushed a delicate teacup across the table. "He is wild, stubborn, and completely blind to what is right in front of him. But I am not blind." Fina kept her face perfectly calm, but her heart started to race. "I know the engagement is a trick to save his company," the older woman said simply. Fina opened her mouth to defend Hyunwoo, ready to use their practiced lies. But Suhi raised a gentle hand to stop her. "Do not pretend," he said. Her voice was not mean or hostile. It was incredibly kind. "I also know that while the ring is a lie, your feelings are not. I see how you look at him when he is not paying attention. And I see how much this act is breaking your heart." That soft, unexpected kindness ruined Fina's control. For 7 years, she had been the perfect executive and the loyal best friend. She had built thick, heavy walls to protect herself. But looking into the older woman's understanding eyes, those walls finally fell down. Fina took a slow, shaky breath. She took off her thin glasses and wiped a tear from her eye. Then she stopped hiding. She told Suhi the whole truth. She talked about loving Hyunwoo in secret for years, about the terrible pain of the fake smiles, and the heavy weight of the diamond ring that meant absolutely nothing to him. Suhi just listened quietly, offering a sad, knowing smile. An hour later, Fina walked into her dark, empty apartment. She slowly pulled the heavy ring off her finger and set it on the table. Then, she opened her laptop, found the earliest flight out of the country, and booked a one-way ticket. Hyunwoo stepped out of the elevator on the top floor. He felt a rare sense of victory. The plan had worked. Grandmother Suhi had called his office that morning to give her official approval of the engagement. The conservative board was satisfied, and his position as CEO was completely safe. He could not wait to tell Fina they had won the war. He pushed open the heavy glass door to her suite, expecting to see her calm face behind the black desk. But the room was completely silent. The lights were dimmed. Her desk was perfectly clean, stripped of her laptop, her favorite pens, and her neat stacks of files. Hyunwoo stopped in his tracks. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. The dangerous, confident energy he had carried all morning instantly vanished. Fina's assistant walked out of the back room holding a small cardboard box. She looked up, her expression tight and sad. She did not say a word to him. She just walked over and handed Hyunwoo a thick, white envelope with his name written on the front. He tore it open, his hands suddenly unsteady. Inside were formal legal papers. It was a notice ending her contract with his company. She was resigning from his retainer, completely cutting her professional ties to his world. Tucked behind the thick legal papers was a small, folded piece of stationery. He opened it. There were only 2 words written in her elegant, careful handwriting. "Be happy." Hyunwoo stared at the paper. He read the 2 words again. The quiet, empty office seemed to ring loudly in his ears. His mind raced back to the dark restaurant, to the clear pain in her eyes when he had described his perfect woman. He remembered how she had crossed her arms tightly in the guest room, trying to protect herself. Suddenly, the heavy truth hit him like a physical blow. The empire, the board, the wealth, none of it mattered. He had been completely blind. He had asked the woman who secretly loved him to play the role of his fake bride, forcing her to smile while he unknowingly broke her heart. The cold victory turned into pure panic. He dropped the legal papers onto the empty mahogany desk, turned on his heel, and ran. Hyunwoo moved through the crowded airport terminal with the exact same dark, focused energy he used to destroy rival companies in the boardroom. People quickly stepped out of his way. His sharp jaw was locked tight, and his black suit jacket flew open as he walked fast. But for the first time in his life, his hands were not steady. They shook slightly as he checked the bright departure screens. Gate 14. He jogged down the long, shiny hallway. His chest burned, but he did not slow down. If he missed her flight, he knew he would lose the only real thing he had ever had. He turned the corner at Gate 14 and stopped. She was sitting quietly in a row of gray chairs near the window. She wore her simple, elegant beige blazer, looking completely calm and put together. Her small suitcase sat next to her feet. Hyunwoo took a deep breath and walked straight toward her. Fina looked up. She saw him coming. For a second, her whole body went completely still. She did not stand up, and she did not try to run away. She had spent 7 years facing his chaotic world without blinking, and she was never a woman who ran from a fight. But as he got closer, her dark eyes did something she could not control. They filled with a deep, sudden warmth, and the heavy walls she had built finally broke apart. He stopped right in front of her. He looked down at her beautiful, serious face. He was breathing hard, and his layered blonde hair was messy. He did not care who was watching. He did not care about the company, the board, or his grandmother's strict rules. He slowly dropped to one knee right there on the airport floor. Fina gasped softly, her hands gripping her purse. She looked at the man who had always been her best friend, the wild billionaire who was finally looking at her with clear, open eyes. He did not give a long, practiced speech. He did not talk about business, contracts, or keeping up an act. He reached out with his shaking hand, gently took her soft fingers in his, and looked deep into her eyes. "Will you marry me for real?" he whispered. The late afternoon sun poured golden light over the quiet garden. There were no flashing cameras, no judging board members, and no strict rules to follow. It was just a small group of family and close friends gathered under the green trees. For the first time, Hyunwoo was not wearing a sharp black suit. He stood at the end of the flower path in a simple, soft white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His blonde hair was loose, and the tattoo on his neck caught the sunlight. He did not look dangerous or cornered anymore. He just looked like a man who had finally found his way home. When the soft music started, Fina walked toward him. She had left her heavy beige blazer and professional armor behind. She wore a beautiful, flowing white dress. Her dark hair was down, and her face was bright and open. She was not acting or pretending to be a flawless executive. She was just Fina, completely real and completely his. When she reached him, he gently took both of her hands. His hands were completely steady now. They did not recite a fake story or read from a script. They looked right into each other's eyes and said real, honest words. He promised to always protect her heart, not just his company. She promised to stay by his side, no longer hiding her feelings in secret. 3 years later, that same garden echoed with loud, happy laughter. A little boy with messy blonde hair and bright, dark eyes ran across the green yard, chasing a red ball. Hyunwoo caught the boy easily, lifting him high into the air as the child giggled wildly. Fina stood on the porch, watching them with a warm smile. She felt a deep, perfect peace. She thought about how this amazing life had started, with a desperate, wild whisper across a polished mahogany desk. The heavy lies, the fake diamond ring, and the scary boardroom threats felt like a lifetime ago. As Hyunwoo carried their son over to kiss her cheek, Fina leaned into him. Looking at her family, she understood the quiet truth. The best love stories do not need a perfect corporate plan. They are the ones that were always true, just waiting for the right moment to finally be spoken.